In this tutorial, we're going to discuss the Canon XA11 camcorder and battery, Bogen tripod, handheld microphone, Sony lavalier microphone, Rode shotgun microphone, XLR cable, boom pole, and headphones. So we're going to start off with the Bogen tripod. We're taking it out of its bag. And it has locks for each of these stages of the legs, which we will unlock and release. If they don't release easily, you can just push them down. And I'm just going to go up to about chin level with that. And lock again. And there are also some clips that lock the legs together, so I'm going to release those as well. And we're just going to spread the legs out so that the spreader is flat and parallel with the ground. So we're going to raise the panning arm up and lock it back down. So there are a couple of controls here for the movement of this head. One of them is a lock for the pan. So the pan lock is here, and that simply locks the pan or the left and right movement of the head, and the tilt lock is here. It's a lock, but it's also a drag, which means it adds tension. If you turn it all the way clockwise, it locks the tilt, so it can't go up and down anymore. But if you back it off just a little bit, it adds a little bit of tension to the tilt. So if I back it off this much, there's tension. If I back it off more, there's a little less tension, and it's a little easier to move. There's also a bubble level. The bubble level lets you know if you're level. There's a target and a bubble, and to balance the head, you just loosen this control here, and that loosens the whole head, whereby you can balance it while you're looking at the target of the bubble level, getting the bubble in the target, and once it's level, you just tighten this, and you're good to go. This tripod has a fluid head, which means the pans and tilts are going to be much more fluid. It's a more professional tripod, and it's designed to carry heavier cameras. So now we're going to talk about the tripod plate, and to get it off so that we can attach it to the bottom of the camera, we're going to loosen this lock right here, and it slides back and forth, but it's still in place. So we need to do one more thing. On the other side of this head, there's a red button. So as we move this back, and this is going to come off of the back of the tripod, that's going to slide off backwards, we're going to push down on this button, and it releases the plate. Once we put the camera back on the plate, we can slide this back on. And as you watch the red button, it's going to go back in and then pop back out. And once that's done, you're on for the most part. You just now have to lock it down with this lever, and good to go. So there's a very specific way of putting this back in the bag. Certainly you want to make sure the tripod plate is reattached to the head, but also you want to make sure that the head is level and not put back like this and tightened down, because that actually puts stress on a spring that's in there. So we're going to just leave the head level and parallel to the ground and loosen the arm. So the arm just hangs down. Okay, we'll tighten that up in just a minute as soon as I put the legs back together, but that's how the head has to be. Then just raise the spreader, put the legs back together. You can snap the clips back together and loosen the locks for the leg stages and back down. If this particular method is awkward for you, you can always set it on the ground and just do it like that. There are these rubber feet on the tripod, and they can be recessed to expose a spike. Now, these spikes are designed to dig into the grass if you are in that situation, but I frankly find they don't really do that much, so let's just, other than scratch floors, let's just keep those recessed, and if you see those poking out, let's just spin those rubber feet so we don't see those spikes. Now what we're going to do is make sure the panning handle is just hanging there. We'll tighten that down and make sure it's recessed into an area that's sort of between the legs. Your XA11 camcorder will be in this bag, and it will also include an AC adapter. So before we put this on the tripod, we need to get the tripod plate on the bottom of it, but also we need to get the battery on. And with this particular camera, we probably should put the battery on first because the plate might be slightly in the way and it'll be difficult to get this battery on. So all we do is we just put it in like this and slide it up. We don't even have to put it away from the bottom, just almost all the way to the top, push in, and then snap right up. So on the bottom of the camera, we have a silver threaded hole and just a registration hole that's not threaded. We're going to put the screw part in the threaded hole and the pin in the other hole. So this screw slides backwards and forwards. We're going to move it all the way to the front, line it up, and screw it in. Now, this has to be screwed in fairly tightly, and you probably may not be able to do it with just your fingernails alone, so you might want to have a screwdriver or a coin to finish the job. So now we're going to slide the camera in from the rear, and as it slides in, we'll notice again the red button is going to pop in and then out, and we will pretty much center it on there for now and lock it down here. So at that point you might want to lock all of your tripod locks, the tilt and the pan lock, just so you're secure in while you're plugging in microphones and so forth. Also so it doesn't just tip and fall over. Now we're going to just do a basic tour of the camera. We're not going to cover every single button because there's a lot on here to cover, but to start with, where do we start and stop it? Right there. We have a zoom rocker switch here. On the other side of the zoom rocker switch, there's a switch that says Auto, M, and Cinema. The M setting for manual is where we usually default. It just means it's automatic with the ability to override any of those settings and manually adjust them. Auto means automatic everything. It's a good setting if you're in trouble and there's maybe the color is messed up and you just don't know how to fix it. Cinema changes the frame rate, it changes the aspect ratio, and I would probably stay away from it because it's not necessarily going to make your video more cinematic. While we're on the top of the camera here, there is another start-stop button and another zoom rocker switch that may be more convenient if you happen to be shooting very low angle. There's some important connections on the side here as well. Over here we have DC in, which is where you're going to charge your battery. AV out connects to older TVs. And here we have a headphone and mic jack, which are important to know because they are very similar, but it's important not to mix those up. We will be focusing more on the XLR mics and not so much on this particular mic jack. When we open the display, you'll see that you are provided with an SD card. On the top is the power switch. The camera setting is for recording, and the media setting is for playback of your clips. There's also this ring, which is focus or zoom, and you determine which it's going to be by selecting on this switch. The lens hood and lens cap are built into one piece. If it ever does fall off, just so you know how to put it back on, it does a slight turn this way and comes off. And to open the lens cap, you just simply flick the switch. On the back of the camera, there's this access light, and that means your SD card is being accessed. So while it's flashing, do not remove the card and do not turn off the camera. To charge your camera's battery, you have this AC adapter. So you'll plug this in here. That end plugs into the wall outlet, and this other end plugs into your camera's DC in port. And that goes into the DC in port. You put your battery on your camera, make sure your camera is turned off, and once you plug in your AC adapter, the power charge light will turn red. Once it is fully charged, the light will go out. On the handle, we have two XLR inputs for microphones, and on the other side, the controls for those microphone inputs. So the top portion of this all refers to input 1 and the bottom to input 2. With the on-off switch in the middle, on means that this handle is now active and any mics you plug into those XLR inputs will be activated. Off means the handle is inactive and the audio reverts to either the onboard camera mics or the mic jack we saw on the body of the camera. On the left it says line, mic, and mic plus 48 volt. Typically you're going to stay in the mic setting. Line level has to do often with audio coming from a mixer. Mic plus 48 volt has to do with microphones that require power. But again, mic will be your typical setting for the equipment you'll be using. If we move a little to the right, for channel 1 and channel 2, we have A and M settings. A is automatic, M is manual. M manual means that that dial to the right is active and you can control the audio levels of your sources manually. You switch to A, automatic, that just means the camera is going to automatically do those levels for you. And those dials to the right will be inactive. So I'm going to switch the camera on, switching it to camera mode, open the display, and we see some on-screen information, and it's very similar to our other Canon camcorders if you haven't used those before, but we can just take a brief look at what's there. On the upper right we have the remaining time in minutes of the battery. Below that we see the A card slot has a card in it which has 2 hours and 53 minutes left. The settings for video are just below. It's 29.97 progressive, the bit rate, and we're shooting MP4 video. Just below that we have audio meters. They're not showing anything right now because I switched the handle switch to the on position. So I have no microphones plugged in. It's not going to show any audio. If I do switch it to the off setting, I'll do that right now. It's going to revert to the camera mic. So that's the internal microphones that are right on top of the lens. And we do see levels, and that's a good thing to have. However, it is important to wear headphones just so you know exactly what audio you're getting. In the upper left is the function button for some basic settings. A few important ones would be white balance, exposure. Focus is important, but we have an autofocus, manual focus button right here, so that might be more convenient to use if you want to switch from manual to automatic. And this mic level refers to changing the mic level of the either onboard camera microphones or the microphone input on the body of the camera. So with white balance, if you've never done a custom white balance, this is how you do it. There's a lot of settings here, and what we're going to do is change it from automatic to a custom setting. Now, why would we do this? In the case of some tricky lighting situations, you might want to do this because the camera is going to do the best job it can to figure out what the color should be. However, if you have mixed colors of light, that is to say, sunlight coming through a window along with some incandescent bulbs in the room, you're going to end up with some very strange looking colors. Some light will look very blue, some light will look very orange. And to fix that, we will tell the camera what white is supposed to look like, and then all of the other colors should fall into place. So we have a couple of different custom white balance settings. On the bottom, it shows the standard white balance icon, 1 and 2. And I'll just go ahead and hit 1. At the bottom, it says set white balance. Just to the right of that says 4000K. It's a color temperature. And that will probably change when we're done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold up this white piece of paper, and if you were shooting an interview subject, you might want to have them hold this in front of their face because that's the important part of the shot. And you would zoom in to fill the frame with the paper. In this case, I'm just going to hold it here. And I'm going to touch set white balance. So that flashes, the icon flashes, and it changes. So to my eye, it has turned white. Now, it's not going to look right to you because we're shooting a video display on a camcorder, so the colors are going to be a little bit off. My camera right now is balanced for the tungsten light in the room, not for this screen on this camcorder. But you saw the shift and you saw what the procedure is supposed to look like. Additionally, you could see the 3200K. That is the color temperature for tungsten light, and that's what I'm using in the room right now. So I'm just going to go back to my original screen, and I can't go back to that main menu again, so I'm just going to close that out. And we'll look at function again, and exposure. Again, this camera does a pretty good job normally, but if you have to do a manual exposure, just click on the M, and that red light goes on, and that means you're in a manual setting, so you can adjust manually one way or the other. I'm going to close out of that screen. And there is a handy tool I like to use. It's a face tracking tool, and all you really have to do is touch a face on the screen and it will track that face. And so I'll just try to track my face, and I'm going to touch the screen and we'll see if that works. And so wherever I move, the square follows me, and I think at the bottom it says cancel, so you can just cancel out of that. A little deeper in the menu, there's something you may have to adjust, only if you're going to use more than one microphone. I'm going to hit function, and that turns into a menu button. I'm going to hit that again, and there's some tabs here. In this first tab, I'm going to scroll down until we find channel 2 input. And so right now what's happening is input 1 is selected. And what that means is anything plugged into input 1 is going to go to both channels of audio. That means you'll see it as the same audio on left and right channels. So that's if you plug into input 1, which also means that input 2 will be inactive. If I go to input 2, that means that input 1 will be routed to the left channel and input 2 is routed to the right channel. So that is a good scenario if you want to use 2 microphones plugged into those XLR connectors. Otherwise, input 1 would be a good default. You're going to see that change. You'll notice here at the bottom it says input 1 on both channels, but if we go to change it to input 2, we have input 1 and input 2 showing. So you would see separate levels for each of those. And if you wear headphones, you might actually hear input 1 in the left ear and input 2 in the right ear, depending on how the settings are in the camera. So we're going to plug in the cable, and you'll notice the cable has 3 pins, and we're going to plug into input 1. You may notice this lock will raise up when I push it in. Just slightly, and it clicks into place. When you remove it, you need to push up on this while you're pulling it out. So I have a handheld mic here, and I'm going to plug the XLR into it. You can see the connectors are the 3-pin connectors, and it's going to go snap. And I'll have to take it off again. Here's the lock, just like that. Most of our handheld microphones have these on-off switches, and some of them are a little bit banged up, like this. So if you want, we can give you a foam windscreen to go with it. There are other mics. Let me show you some more. This is also a handheld mic. It's listed as TCS handheld microphone. in the Connect 2 software. So if you look that one up, it's pretty much exactly the same as the other ones. The only difference is it's a little newer and it maybe looks a little better on camera. So not exactly any different than the others or any better quality, but it may look a little better on camera. Again, clicks into place, has an on-off switch, and I'll show you some more. This is a lavalier mic. It is very similar to the one I'm wearing right now. It is designed to be put on clothing, and it's okay that it actually is visible, but you don't want the cable to be showing. That looks sloppy. So it is a small capsule mic. It, in this case, is an XLR microphone. Same connector. You plug this into the cable. Make sure you don't plug this directly into the camera. It just stresses out the XLR connector on it. Even though this does have about 10 feet of cable, here we want it plugged into the cable, not directly into the camera. Unlike the other microphones, it does not have an on-off switch, but it does have a battery, a AA battery. So this has a clip, and it's removable, since you may have to put the clip on one side or another depending on the clothing. And to take this clip off, you just squeeze this little wire part right here, and it makes the loop bigger so it's removable, and then switch it around like so. One more mic. This is the Rode mic. It's a shotgun mic, which means it's very directional. That is, it will pick up sounds that are in front of it more than to the side. It is powered by a battery, an internal battery that lasts up to 150 hours when fully charged. You'll be provided with a USB cable to charge it, but we usually charge it before it goes out. So there's the USB connector for charging, and we have some buttons on here, and most importantly, there is a power button. So we'll hold down on that for just a couple of seconds, and we have a green light. It is good. So to turn it off, likewise, you'd hold down for a couple of seconds and it would go out. A couple of other buttons here, most importantly at the top, it's a high frequency boost. It increases the human voice frequencies, and the middle button is a high pass filter, which will reduce low frequency sounds in a room, such as air conditioning noise. You can experiment with those a little bit. Otherwise, if you're not sure, just leave those alone. Again, to turn this off, we will just hold down. So this is the boom pole, and there are two locks. I'm going to unlock the top one first, extend and lock, and the bottom one, extend and lock. We're going to snap the microphone on, and we're going to, rather than let this cable just hang down, because it might end up being in the shot, we're going to wrap it around the length of the boom pole. An easy way to do that is to just let it hang down, and we're just going to twirl the boom pole. That way, when you bring it in, the cable's not hanging down. So the idea is to bring this into the shot, or rather not in the shot, because you do not want this mic to be visible. You do want it to be above your subject and pointing at their mouth. Make sure the pole is not in any part of the shot. And if for some reason it's difficult to get this shot, you can come in from underneath. That's just as good. Now, I don't necessarily think you need to do manual audio levels for B-roll, but if you're doing an interview and you have time to set your levels, that would be a good thing. So if you have to do that, you can have your subject talk, and you will set your levels as they speak. So this is before the interview actually starts, and you want your levels to peak somewhere between -12 and -6. Now these are negative numbers we're seeing, so we don't have a 12 or a 6, but between the 10 and 0, for those peaks to happen there would be good. Right now it's way too high, so I'm going to just turn the dial on this camera so it goes down. As I turn it down, it looks like that input 1 on top is going lower. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's definitely definitely going lower. So I'm going to have to make the second one, the second dial, match that as well. So I'm going to turn that down and try to get that to match. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And if you wanted, you could make the second one lower just in case the top one got too loud and you weren't paying attention. You could always revert to that second channel. But for our purposes, this makes it simple, and this works pretty well. Oh, and one more thing about XLR cables and the care and handling of them. We like them to be returned pretty much the same way we gave them to you, which is with loops that are relatively big. If you do these small loops, it's bad for the cable. It puts little bends in them, reduces the life of the cable. So nice big loops. And if you know how to do over and under method for wrapping cables, do that. It's great. But if you don't, do the best you can. I don't really want to teach over and under right now because it's probably beyond the scope of this video. I don't want to take any more of your time, and that's something you could learn. And if you do, people will be very impressed. They'll say, who is that person that wraps over and under? They're amazing, truly. And also, wear headphones. It's very important that you wear them because you never know what you're getting. The meters may say you're getting something, but you don't really know what that is unless you're wearing headphones. So we don't have a lot of them, but you can always use your own, and as long as they have the 3.5 millimeter mini plug, you are good to go. Finally, we're just going to take a quick look at where you can find these items on the Connect2 website. So you're going to go to Connect2, and you will book by category, book, and there are a couple of things that are already here on screen. They're the Bogan tripod and the boom pole, so that's really easy. We don't have to look for them. So we'll just go add to basket, and add to basket. If you do have to look for them, you can just type in Bogan or boom pole. Next, we'll get the camcorder, so XA11. We'll type in the search bar, enter, and we're going to see the camcorder and the battery for it. I'm going to select 2 batteries by clicking that twice, and I'm going to select the camcorder. Now we'll look at the mics. I'm just going to type in MIC for the mic. And here's our handheld microphone. I'm just going to get one of each. One handheld. Requires XLR cable. That'll be separate. We have the lavalier microphone. It's the Sony ECM44B. I'll click on that. This isn't necessarily recommended for our use, but you could get it for this camera if you were in a pinch. This is not the Rode mic you want, the one that says Rode mic. That's the camera mounted version. The one you want is the Rode shotgun microphone, requires XLR cable. It's the NTG4 Plus. And we'll add that to the basket. It's good to know that we have these card readers here. It's under Micromate Reader. Because there's MIC and micro, that's why it shows up in the search. If you don't have a card reader in your computer, you might want to add one of these to the basket. There's also the TCS handheld microphone. It's no better or worse than the one above. It's just a little newer and may look better on camera, but there's no real difference. We will also need an XLR cable, so I will scroll to the top, type in XLR, enter. Again, we're seeing all these mics because they're saying requires XLR cable, but here's our XLR cable. We'll get one of those. And if you need headphones, type headphones, enter, and there they are. Add to basket. So we look at our basket and we have our Bogan tripod, boom pole, the 2 small batteries, the Canon XA11 camcorder, handheld microphone, headphones, lav mic, and Rode shotgun microphone, and the XLR cable. Hopefully you know where to go from here as far as selecting your time and date of pickup and return. So we covered a lot, but not everything, obviously. So if you have any questions, you can contact us, and our contact information is on the homepage of the Connect2 website. So thanks for your time, and if there's anything else I can do for you, I'm always here to help.